Welcome to the Tell Our Stories podcast. I'm your host, Perry Chris. On today's episode, I got the chance to speak with two of the minds behind the new docuseries, People Worth Caring About. Jaylene Carpenter, the president and CEO of the Nebraska Healthcare Association, working closely with the host of the series, Peter Murphy Lewis, spent 10 days visiting 7 different care communities across the state of Nebraska. Peter spent the days working with the staff there, hearing their stories, as well as hearing from community members, volunteers, and the residents themselves. The 7-part docuseries takes viewers inside senior care, all across the care continuum. And I can say with confidence that even one of these episodes is sure to have a lasting impact on you. Listen in to our conversation about the birth of the idea, the creation and production, and what lessons they learned and hope to pass on to the viewers. All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time today. Can I have you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Jaylene Carpenter. I'm the president and CEO of Nebraska Healthcare Association. We represent Nebraska nursing homes and Nebraska assisted living communities.
My name is Peter Murphy Lewis. I am the producer of the documentary series People Worth Caring About. And when I'm not a content creator there, I'm a fractional CMO.
Fantastic. So I got a chance to watch the docu-series. I wanted to ask how that sort of came to be from your end.
It's a bit of a process of how
Of
this thing
course, of
came
course.
to be. So I'll start the story, but I might have Peter jump in and help us along the way as well. So Nebraska Healthcare Association was hosting what was called an Innovation Summit 3 years ago now. And
Okay.
Peter at the time was doing a podcast, Long-Term Care Heroes. Did I get the name right, Peter? Yes. So Peter came out to our Innovation Summit and podcasted throughout the entire event,
Oh,
interviewing
great.
different people, etc. And at the time, he met with some of our business members, with us, and we have one of our fantastic business members. His name is Jeff Heaton with HCS, and he loves to dream big. And him and Peter were having a conversation about telling the story of Nebraska and nursing homes and assisted living communities. And
Sure.
Jeff sort of dreamed big, was like, we should do a documentary, we should do all these things. And
Yeah.
Peter's like, we can do that. And then Peter gets around to me after. So I don't know, Peter, you want to tell a little bit of that portion of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's right on point. I think that Jeff was the catalyst of how can this happen? And I have had a TV show that's a similar format in South America for almost 9 years now.
Wow.
And I've done it in Spanish. So this was the
Hmm.
first time of me doing the exact same concept in English, but what made it easy is I was already passionate about long-term care. I didn't have to
Yeah.
fake it to make it. I'm already
Right.
passionate about CNA. I'm already passionate about the Midwest.
Hmm.
Jaylene and her team were great from the beginning. So it just kind of happened. I would say 2 phone calls, 2 conversations in person, and maybe a couple beers.
Yeah, that's all it takes. That's a good ramp up into this.
Yeah. I will say my favorite that I always tell people, Peter, is at one point in our conversation, you said, you're like, I'll just get a GoPro and I'll slap it on my head and I'm going to go work alongside these people. And I'm like, yes, that sounds fantastic. And if you've seen the docuseries, it is far more than
Yeah.
Peter with the GoPro on his head. It is amazing.
Well,
Yeah, no,
things
it
the
was truly
production
fantastic.
team cut that idea off. And they're like, that's not gonna look good. It might be like getting into the weeds and get your hands dirty. But let's make this the quality that the caregivers and obviously the residents deserve. So I'm glad I got
Yeah.
vetoed.
Right. Right. Jaylene, can you tell me about what the pitch was like when you were talking to these different facilities and care locations and the workers there? What was the pitch like to get them to be on board with being followed around for the day and the work that they do?
Yeah, I think if it's okay, I'll back up a little bit. And it really
Please,
started
yeah.
with the pitch for funding, and
Okay.
going to our foundation. We have a foundation within our association whose mission is to grow a vital workforce here for our
Yeah.
communities. And so we went to the foundation with this idea, and we really said, if our mission as an organization and as a foundation is to grow workforce, we need to show them what does it mean to work in a
Yeah.
community, and how is it impactful for you, for giving, for caring for individuals, but also highlighting all of the jobs that are available.
Right.
People
Absolutely.
think of healthcare as nurses. They don't think of
Mhm.
healthcare as life enrichment and maintenance and housekeeping. So we really, really started this up, like, how do we show workforce in a whole new way? Um,
Yeah.
so that was where it started. And then we partnered with a fantastic organization called Golden Gen Movement.
Okay.
And she has a mission to elevate the workers within long-term care. And she helped us vet facilities. And so I know,
Hmm.
Peter, you were on a lot of those calls when we would sort of pitch this idea of coming in and looking. But I think it really started with the lens of, we want to show how amazing it is to work in a facility.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly.
So, Peter, I don't know, anything else you would add on those conversations?
I would add to the accolades for the Golden Gen and Amber's work. She did a lot of the great filtering. You can imagine how hard it is to choose, Perry, 7 long-term care
Yeah.
senior communities when you have hundreds to show off, 50 that are amazing, 80 that are amazing, 120 amazing, and whittle that
Hmm.
down. But Amber and the Nebraska Healthcare Association team did a great job of figuring out a diverse group of size, differences, age, young,
Yeah.
faith-based, nonprofit, private, just really, really beautiful work.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things that I enjoyed about the docuseries is that not only did you see such a width and breadth of different staff and caretakers, but also it showed the full, at least from my perspective, showed the full, size of this care continuum. This is very much not just, it's assisted living, it's independent living, it's hospice care. And I think that's one of these things that, when you think about it and you're not involved in this world, it's sort of this monolith, but being able to show these different levels of care, these different levels of acuity, these different interactions that you can have in different spaces was really really great. How was that like for you, being able to sort of in such a short time see such a large continuum of care, Peter?
Uh, People always ask which is my favorite, and I said
Hmm.
I can give you my top 7 favorite. I have 7 that are tied for first place.
Yeah.
Uh, I had an idea of the care continuum as a high schooler because my parents started to take care of my grandparents, and I helped move my grandparents into assisted and then to SNF. But I wasn't nearly as present. I was living in South America.
Sure.
So to be able to do the daily work and see the passion,
Hmm.
it was far surpassed my expectations. I thought that it was going to be beautiful. I thought that we would be able to show the passion of the caregivers through their face and their stories.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going to laugh as much as we did. I didn't know I was going to cry as much as we did. That is really what came through. Like Phil Scalo, the ACA chair, said that it's one of the most accurate depictions of the caregiver resident relationship that he's ever seen in his life. And, that's 20 or 30 decades of a senior leader in our industry. And I wasn't expecting that, right? Definitely
Yeah.
didn't expect to hear that from him. I didn't think that we would achieve half of that. So I'm excited
Sure.
that we got somewhat close to it.
Yeah. Jaylene, I know that this world of skilled nursing, senior care as a whole is so hard to represent, as you said, Peter. It's really hard to get an accurate depiction of that. Was there any part of this docuseries that you were really happy that got captured, that you weren't, something that you don't think gets talked about enough that you feel got adequately captured in the docuseries?
It's so hard because now it's like, Peter, it's like every episode captured something
Yeah.
uniquely different.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so many things come to mind. Number one, the very first episode in Wakefield, Peter they use the term humanity,
Hmm.
and just the humanness of it. And
Yeah.
sometimes in healthcare, we don't feel that way, right? Like it's
Yeah.
very transactional. Healthcare feels very transactional. And we always try
Hmm.
to explain that long-term care is different. And so this docuseries highlighted that. Um, the, the beautiful representation of hospice to me was
Hmm.
so critical because it
Yeah.
is something that we just don't address very often. So the episode around hospice to me was important. Um, but then the other, oh, there's so many, but the other one, there's an entire episode where essentially it's Peter helping clean a room.
Yeah.
And that's not the whole episode, but it's a large portion of it. And it is the most dignified experience that I have seen. And
Mm.
it is focused literally around the importance of what it means to have a resident have a space that is clean and inviting and like that there is purpose in doing that
Hmm.
work. And that to me was so important to tell.
Hmm.
Perry, I want to a couple things that I'm excited that captured. And in a cold room in a cold setting, I might be able to think, oh, this is possible. But
Yeah.
I thought that we would have had to cherry pick somebody. I
Hmm.
met at least three people who had tried to retire or had left long-term care 2 years previous to being on the docuseries and either came out of retirement or came back to the job that might be
Wow.
a lower paying job, more stressful
Yeah.
job, less rewarding job from a societal point of view, but so fulfilling for them. That the capturing Barb talk about how she tried to retire a couple times and
Yeah.
she came back. There's another instance that was captured, which was the relationship between a gentleman who had a bird in his room. I think it was a parakeet, and the relationship that he created with his caretaker was, almost like a daughter father relationship.
Sure.
He would reprimand her if she didn't say hi. He would reprimand her if she didn't say goodbye. He would be worried if she didn't show up on time or if she was
Yeah.
sick. That and I want to use this in the most human way. That dependency of being understood and being loved,
Hmm.
I didn't think we were gonna be able to capture that, and that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the example of the hospice setting you worked in, one of my favorite scenes from the whole series was when you were in that hospice space and the woman who had lost the power of speech but was writing down that was her ability to communicate with you all. And I thought that was such a remarkable example because when you think of hospice, it's not, you don't often think of happy things. But even this woman who had lost the ability to speak, being able to convey such messages of love and of caring with those around her was so beautiful. What was that? What was that like being in that space? I mean, it was so powerful even through the camera, but being in that space yourself, what was that like?
For me,
Yeah.
life changing,
Mm.
life changing. Um, I've I've always lived my life off of a phrase that my mom taught has said to me over 100 times, which is the only thing in life you can control is your attitude. Can't
Hmm.
always control how much money you're going to make or when you die or the friends that you'll have or how your family treats you.
Sure.
But Kim is, symbolized that phrase that I learned from my mom and that the appreciation that she had for life in a way is words that she was sharing for her staff, for her team, which at that
Yeah.
point, when you're in hospice, that's not only your home, it's the last place you're going to be. And she was
Right.
excited for that. And she felt so appreciative of the people around it, which is not common, right? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
especially in an older generation. Like maybe I'm 44, like the generation below me is getting better at words. My generation's a little bit better than my parents' generation. The generation above my parents, which were a lot of the people that I was working with in these long-term
Yeah.
care communities, their love language is not words, right? Their love
Hmm.
language was paying for us to go to college or buying us a car or being the best grandparent they could, but they sometimes struggled to be a present parent. Um, Her love language was words in an
Hmm.
industry where we don't tell people how much we appreciate them.
Yeah.
I think it's the epitome of what we tried to accomplish, and Kim did it for us.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Jaylene, I know it was so great to be able to go to 7 different places in Nebraska. What was the makeup like in terms of sort of, were these mostly rural facilities? Were these some in city centers? What was the makeup of the facilities like?
Very intentionally, we tried to show all of Nebraska
Yeah.
in I'll give Peter's team credit, in 7 days. Was it 7 or 10? Either way, it was a very short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, they were in everything. We have Omaha facilities, which would be considered our larger metropolitan
Hmm.
area. We were in mid-size communities. We were in very small communities. Um, we were very intentional to ensure that we showed a true picture of Nebraska. So it
Yeah.
was not just, centered in one part of the state. They were all over the
Hmm.
state.
Yeah. Sort of on that sort of note of all over, Peter, you mentioned earlier that you had spent time doing similar things in South America. I'd love to hear about that. And then also, what are some of the differences that you think are significant between these spaces in South America versus in Nebraska?
I'll start with the differences because there aren't very many. Um, you know, by saying that I'll start with the similarities. The similarities are I always explain to people in South America that Kansas, where I'm from, or the Midwest or Nebraska,
Hmm.
is very similar to Latin American culture, even though you wouldn't believe it. We
Mm.
might not have an accent that you can understand in the Midwest. We might go to a Protestant church instead of a Catholic church, like you might in Latin
Sure.
America. Might play American football instead of soccer. But the most important thing is your friends, your family, and high school sports.
Yeah.
And that's the same. And we just have a different accent. We speak with a different language, but it's the same thing. So getting Latin Americans who are often shy on camera, same for Midwesterners, to
Hmm.
feel comfortable expressing their appreciation or how hard their life has been or what they
Sure.
want, right? Like that's not what we're great at in the Midwest nor in Latin America. So sharing people's stories that was the same challenge, but also just as rewarding when you're able to pull it off. The differences, are around my TV show in South America has a lot of action involved. To make
Hmm.
good, captivating TV nowadays, you need to be moving, right? Like TikTok speed.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
like I'm either skydiving or I'm welding underneath of a ship in the water in the ocean. Well, in
Yeah.
long-term care, I can't run a marathon with a CNA or clean the gutter on a 10th story building like I did on my TV show. So you had to
Hmm.
depend a lot more upon people's facial expressions or the daily routines that the three of us might be like, that is so boring. Why would we want to ever see Peter take curlers out of someone's hair or Peter play bingo or these things that have the stereotype of being boring? If you put a human story behind of it, none of it's boring. Like but Jaylene said that it's one of the greatest things that she's done in her professional career. My
Mm.
my my father told me when he left the premiere, he said, "This is one of the most beautiful things that I have ever seen in my entire life." My dad took care of
Wow.
his parents in the
Yeah.
nursing home 10 years before they passed 7 days a week. So
Hmm.
those small details is probably where I feel like the main difference was. It was harder, but when you pull it off, it's better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Jaylene, since this has come out and since this has been consumed, and I hope it is to be consumed by more people. What have been some of the successes that you've seen in Nebraska after this has come out?
Yeah, first off, I would encourage everybody to go watch it,
Absolutely.
because it is truly the best representation I've ever seen of our industry. Um, there's been a lot of fantastic momentum within the local community level. I love our Auburn community. They hosted their own premiere at the local movie theater, and the
Oh,
community
great.
came and watched and came and
How cool is
experienced.
that?
Yeah, it was so cool. And to just, have that community embrace, but also have a whole new lens. I guarantee people who watched it had no idea.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
we had one of our communities that was in the episode or in one of the episodes, and it's a nonprofit, and they have a board. And she showed it at their board meeting, and she literally had a board member say to her, I had no idea that this is what you do. And,
Wow.
and that is somebody who, approves their financials and approves their budget, but
Yeah, very integrally
yeah,
involved. Yeah.
didn't understand. We recently showed it to a large group of our senators, and just the impact that it made on them of understanding our issues has just been tremendous. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. We're growing to get it in front of, more high school students, more
Yeah.
college students, so they start to understand why this could and is a really great profession to work in.
Yeah. That was another thing that I loved about it is that showing the age difference in different people that work there, if it's on a volunteer basis or if they work there full time. Peter, what would you say were some of the differences that you saw and some of the important differences, I guess, between some of these volunteers or workers that are in high school, fresh out of college, versus the people who have been there for a longer time?
I'll have to think on that for a minute, but you mentioning the younger students takes me back to your previous question about things that I'm happy that we captured. It
Hmm.
make, when I go into a shoot to a day, I almost go in completely blind. So my director
Mm.
and I know that I do a better job of sharing people's story if I don't know what I'm walking into. So the
Sure.
day that we worked with the high school students who were working as volunteers and planting plants and helping seniors outside was a surprise to me. So that's one thing that I'm glad that we captured because I think that there's probably 95% of Americans who, between the age of 14 and 18, that don't know, realize that they can make a difference one day at a time, one life at a time, one senior at a time,
Yeah.
and have fun. And they're going to feel safe and they're going to have amazing leaders to take them in. So directly to your question, I would say that I don't remember. I don't know if I noticed much of a difference because the the caretakers that I interacted with that have been in the industry for 3 decades had the same passion that these first year CNAs had. People find their calling and then they realize that they just can't leave. I met a number of caretakers who said, I can't believe that I was 50 when I found long-term care. What was I doing for
Mm.
the first 25 of my life, years of
Yeah.
my life professionally?
Yeah.
And so when you find a 19-year-old or a 17-year-old who's a CNA, you're like, wow, somebody who can be happy for 40 years
Yeah. You got it
and
early.
make a difference. Like I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I get older. I wish I had the vision that these young teenagers have.
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to ask both of you, just because you played each such different but remarkably integral roles in this. What was the biggest surprise with this process?
So maybe I guess this was probably a surprise. So um, Peter was fantastic at laying out expectations ahead of time. And,
Hmm.
he's like, Jaylene, we're going to go to 7 facilities. We're going to get maybe enough for a 30-minute piece, maybe enough for 40 minutes. And I'm thinking, that's great. I can use that. Like that should tell an adequate story. And so,
Yeah.
that was sort of as we went in. We were filming a documentary, a 30-minute what is it like to work and live in communities.
Yeah.
And I came to the final day of taping at the Nye community, and Peter comes up to me. He's like, Jaylene, it's too good. Like every single we have something magical at every single location. Can we pivot?
Yeah.
Like, can we pivot and let's look at this differently? And Peter and I know each other well enough now that like 5 minutes of brainstorming and he and I are like like you're just excited to go a different
Yeah.
direction. um I'm not surprised that we had magic at every location,
Hmm.
but it was a fantastic surprise to find out that we could pivot and make it into this really impactful docu-series
Yeah.
instead of a kind of standard, long form kind of documentary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would add on, well, for starters, I didn't think it was going to be as easy as it was. And that is,
Mm.
a thanks to Amber and to Lindsay and to the director, Vale, of finding such amazing people that felt comfortable sharing their story with diverse stories that made for 7 days of great content. surprises for me on the personal side, like through this process in the last 9 months, like I would consider Jaylene and Lindsay one of my friends, and I didn't know that they were going to
Mm.
be friends, right? Like Lindsay probably wants to block my cell phone because I call her once a week for something, and Jaylene and I are going to go to one convention together, and I'm like, bring your husband, I'm bringing my wife, our families need to see how,
Yeah.
how much we enjoy this. And then kind of the trifecta is my wife has seen me do television for some time, and I don't think she ever understood how much of an impact it can have. And
Yeah.
when she saw the people at the premiere come up and say how important it was for them to have a visual component to share their legacy of not only them, but all of their team and Nebraska as a whole. And that my
Yeah.
wife got it. And she's like, go do this more, go do this, go do this more. Those are kind of some outsider behind the scene things that surprised me.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so our audience can make sure that they catch every single episode, what's the easiest way to find this online?
You can go to our Nebraska Healthcare Association website, and there's a People Worth Caring About, or just go to YouTube, type in People Worth Caring About. All the
Hmm.
episodes are going to be there. I would say every episode is so unique and it
Yeah.
captures something different. So definitely encourage you to watch all of them. There is, like Peter said, we cannot pick a favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
That's one of the
say,
things I
I would
also,
say
oh, sorry, go ahead,
I,
Peter.
I would say pick one and send it to a caretaker that you know in your world and say, thank you. I know this is what you do. And now I'm gonna tear up, Perry, but send it to him and say, now I know how important your job is. And then
Yeah.
pick one and send it to a 15-year-old and say, you have the heart to do this.
Hmm.
Go volunteer. You can make a difference because it'll make a difference in your life as you'll see in the caretakers, but you'll see a difference it makes in the seniors and give them quality of life where they live in their home in a nursing home.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things about the whole thing is that the name of people worth caring about. I think that's such a lovely sentiment, not only for the workers, but I think that also really applies to the people who live there as well, because this is an industry that is so often brushed to the side in terms of what we think about. And so having this beautiful piece of media to show how the truth and the love in these spaces was such a great thing to see. So thank you both so much for not only taking the time today, but for putting together this fantastic thing. And I hope it gets as way more eyes than it already has. So thank you again.
No, thank you so much.
I want to extend another big thank you to Peter and Jaylene for taking the time to talk to me and to share more about their experience in creating this series. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find it simply by looking up People Worth Caring About or on the Nebraska Healthcare Association website and YouTube channel. I truly cannot recommend it enough. You will be hard-pressed to find a better use of 15 minutes than watching an episode of this series. As always, you can hear more from us at Tell Our Stories on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And if you have a story you want to share, send us a message at info@tellourstories.com or on any of our social media pages. Thanks for tuning in.